In 1994, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. In 1995, I was told it had spread, with at least 12 tumors visible in my liver. A surgeon told me to go home and think about the quality, not the quantity, of my remaining days. My children were 1 and 3 years old. I was devastated at the thought of leaving them. So I didn't go home and think about the quality of my remaining days. I went home and made doctor's appointments at 5 hospitals in 3 cities, looking for someone who could offer me hope. I found a surgeon in Los Angeles who agreed to do a risky new procedure called cryosurgery. He would open me up, ultrasound my liver, and inject liquid nitrogen through a probe into the tumors, freezing them to destruction. He told me there was a 50-50 chance I would die on his table. I went for it, ready to have it save my life or to die trying. As I lay on the gurney, saying goodbye to my family on my way into the operating room, I remember feeling an extraordinary sense of peace. I knew I was doing the right thing in my heart and in my gut, and I was prepared to accept the consequences. He did open me up and found 1 tumor, not a dozen. Had I not had the drive to push for an extraordinary protocol, my 1 tumor would have spread, and I would have died later than expected. No one would have known I could have lived. So after all that, I went back to work. I taught law students to do legal work with prison inmates as their clients. You see, my job was the same, but I was completely different. I kept having this dream that I was floating over my own funeral, which was much later than anyone expected, because I supposedly had a liver full of tumor. Everyone was remarking on what a testament this was to my indomitable spirit, or my love for my children, or even my hard-headedness. I floated over all of this, screaming, "No, I could have lived!" But of course, no one could hear me. I was haunted. I needed to make sense out of this experience, to have something of value come from it. A few months later, my oncologist called me and said, "Hey, listen, I got this lady, she just had surgery, she's kind of down. Would you ever just come talk to her?" I hopped on the bus, and in 30 minutes was sitting across from Helen in her hospital room. We talked for a long time about living and dying, and about hope and reality. Helen saw that I had hair and a life after cancer. When I got up to leave, she picked up a letter from her bedside table and said, "Say, you're a lawyer. My doctor wants me to stay here for 5 nights, but my insurance company is only willing to pay for 3. Can you help with that?" "Give me that," I said. And by the end of the day, let's just say her insurance company had seen the wisdom of a 5-day stay. And I was hooked and off on my new career as a patient advocate. Well, it didn't take me long to realize that I wasn't going to personally be able to help all the folks who needed help navigating the healthcare system by myself. And it occurred to me that this would be a remarkable learning experience for future doctors, lawyers, nurses, anyone really with an interest in healthcare. If they could have a chance before they became somebody's doctor or lawyer or nurse to walk a little ways on their healthcare journey with some patients, they just might learn a thing or two that would help them be better advocates for their future patients and clients. And so 17 years ago, the Center for Patient Partnerships was born at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. At the center, students from across disciplines come together to advocate for people with serious illnesses. Over the course of nearly 2 decades, we've partnered with thousands of patients. We start by helping them absorb the shock of a diagnosis, and then to muster the information they need and the confidence they need to participate fully in complex treatment decision-making. But complex treatment decision-making can seem easy compared to what comes next. Because in America, it's not enough to be facing a life-threatening illness. Patients and their families are then hurled into a vortex of confusing insurance denials. How can the care my doctor ordered be not medically necessary? Or how was I supposed to know the anesthesiologist in my surgery was out of network? Or, you say this is covered, but then why do I have a bill for $7,000? And what's a UCR anyway? And as if that's not enough, skittish employers who don't understand the realities of a treatment protocol get frustrated by what they consider to be excessive absences, and patients lose their jobs. And with their jobs often goes their health insurance. So we help people appeal insurance denials and communicate with their employers. Our guiding principle is empowerment, whatever that means to each individual, to leave them better able to advocate for themselves. Sometimes we write the appeals and argue them with patients. Other times the patients do it, and we coach them from the side. Solving problems one at a time can get frustrating, especially when the same issues occur over and over again. You don't have to pull people out of the river for very long before it dawns on you that it just might make sense to send someone upstream to figure out where the bridge is broke and fix it. So we do that too. Whenever possible, we change healthcare at the policy level. Recently, we had the chance to work with the parents of children with Angelman syndrome and other genetic cognitive disabilities to help them advocate for the same therapy benefits that children with autism receive. You see, when the Affordable Care Act was passed and mandated coverage for children with autism, many insurers saw this as an opportunity to stop covering other genetic cognitive disorders. We made sure the policymakers heard these parents' voices loud and clear, and today, these children are covered. We've learned a lot over the course of 17 years about what makes healthcare safe and effective. And it can be summarized in one word: partnership. Now, there's a lot of talk about partnership in healthcare, but not a lot of progress towards more collaborative care. So what can we do about that? How can we help build the kinds of partnerships that assure healthy patients and clinicians? And how can we help rescue our critically ill healthcare system? Well, we can start by agreeing on the purpose of those partnerships. Partnerships on a system level begin when we achieve a shared vision of what we want our healthcare system to be. Is it health we're after, or is it healthcare widgets at a profit? If it's health we want, clinicians and patients alike are going to have to make significant individual sacrifices for a collective benefit. Now, that's going to require that we believe the outcome to be worth it. But if we design the outcome, we can make sure it is worth it. Partnerships in a clinical level begin when patients and clinicians believe that each brings vital expertise to the table and that both are necessary to effective health care. Doctors know about medicine. Patients know about our bodies, our goals, and what we consider to be acceptable quality of life. Effective health care begins when patients and clinicians design it together and fight together to make sure patient care comes first. Physicians can help by being honest about the limitations of their skills and expertise and about what is and is not possible in medicine today. Patients can help by accepting the fact that physicians are not magicians. They did not design or build the human body, and they do not have all the spare parts. We have much work to do in our culture to accept the realities of death and dying. In conversations about serious illness, the appropriate denominator is not life eternal with perfect health. The appropriate denominator is dying of this or something else. But what about when patients are hesitant to get involved? Recently, I accompanied Paul and Laura to visit Paul's oncologist. Paul had recently retired and was diagnosed with prostate cancer. He listened carefully as his doctor explained the nature of his diagnosis and the various treatment options, and then asked him what he wanted to do. "Whatever you say, Doc, you're the expert. I've seen this scene unfold dozens of times, and usually what comes next is a doctor says, 'Right you are, Paul, we'll take good care of you.' But not this time. This time was different. The doctor put down his pen and looked Paul square in the eye and said, 'Mr. Anderson, I'm honored by your faith in my medical expertise, and I work hard to maintain it. But medical expertise is only half of what we need here. We also need expertise in you. Only you know what's normal for your body. Only you know what's important for you. We're going to need to weigh risks and benefits and side effects, and I'm going to need your help.'" Paul sat up a little straighter in his chair, and a hint of a grin came across his face. And he said, "Well, if you put it that way, Doc, I guess I am kind of an expert. And I want to help. But just so you understand, I'm not much of a science guy." There are lots of reasons patients hesitate. We're afraid we won't understand. And we don't want to look stupid. And we certainly don't want to seem to be challenging our clinicians. But whatever the reason, it is never because we truly don't want to be involved. No one has a greater stake in the outcome than we do. We have much work to do as a culture to accept the realities of death and dying. In conversations about serious illness, the appropriate denominator is not life eternal with perfect health, but rather dying of this or something else. The benefits of that work are extraordinary. The promise of partnership is powerful. With healing as a guiding principle, physicians can find joy in practice and be healing partners and not profit engines. With healing as a guiding principle, patients can embrace our commitment to our own health and have no doubt about whose interests our doctors are pursuing. 23 years ago, I had to make a difficult decision about whether to have a highly risky surgery. I turned to my oncologist for help. "What should I do?" I asked him. I knew he would tell me the truth. "I don't know," he said. "We don't know. You are at the edge of medical knowledge. And the only answer available is in your gut. The same is true for us today. The answer is in our collective gut. We need to look deep inside ourselves and ask what we want our healthcare system to be. If we choose health, we will need to muster the strength and the heart and the guts to settle for nothing less. Thank you.